I am California of the past.
I am California of the past.
I
I am
am
California of the past.
My name is Bob Robles. I was born and raised in San Bernardino, and I hope to give you a little glimpse into my family history. And so to begin with, I was born in Loma Linda on March 5th, 1946, at the old Loma Linda Hospital, which at the time was known as a sanitarium. I don't know why my mother chose this sanitarium to have myself and my brother, but maybe it was part of the Santa Fe medical plan. For a while, we lived on a small street off of 7th Street in the west side of San Bernardino, and after a few years we moved to a house on Western between 9th and Baseline. I attended Mount Vernon Elementary for 2 years and remember walking home from school to my house, which was about 5 blocks away. At the time there were a lot of empty fields with a few farms here and there, and by the time I got home my socks were full of foxtails. During those times, it was English only in school, and I quickly forgot how to speak Spanish. I guess I should thank my grandparents for what little Spanish I do know. They used to speak to us in Spanish. They knew English, but spoke to us in Spanish, maybe to get us to respond in Spanish, but we would always respond in English. But to this day, I still know a little Spanish to get me over in Mexico or here in town. We used to go to the Baseline Theater every Friday, and they used to have a cash drawing between the movies. Well, one Friday my dad struck it rich and we won. With that money, my dad bought a new house located around the corner of Mill and Mount Vernon. The year was 1952. The neighborhood was mostly white with a few Hispanics, and we attended Midcalf Elementary School, which was integrated with blacks, whites, and Hispanics. The school, I think, was demolished in the 1960s. It was one of the original elementary schools in San Bernardino. Every year, I remember the circus would come into town and set up a field located on the corner of Mill and Mount Vernon. Later, this was the location of the new Fedco store. Anyway, all of the circus performers and animals would march down Mill Street, and we would all be out in the street waving at everyone. There were horses, elephants, lions, and maybe a few tigers. During the circus, my dad would park cars in our front yard and make a few dollars. My father, Robert C. Robles, was born in Yuma, Arizona, as were his mother and grandfather. The family has been in Arizona since the early 1800s, and we are a certified pioneer family of Arizona. During World War II, my dad found work in San Bernardino, mainly because we had relatives here already, and shortly thereafter the Robles family moved to San Bernardino from Brawley. My grandfather opened a small neighborhood store named Robles Groceries, which was located across the street from the Casa Mexicano, located on 6th Street. My father served in the U.S. Navy during the war, as had most of my uncles. There were about 10 uncles who served in the war, and every single one of them made it back. After the war, my father started his career with the Santa Fe Railroad and trained as a machinist. We used to take my dad his lunch, and sometimes while we were there, the Santa Fe whistle would go off and scare the heck out of us. To us and most of the families in that area, the whistle was our clock, going off in the morning, lunch, and afternoons. My mother was born in Los Angeles in 1922 and was raised in Colton, California. My grandmother and grandfather migrated to Colton in the early 1900s. During that time, the family would work the fields located up and down California, and that is why my mother and most of her sisters were born in cities all over California. One of my mother's sisters was married to one of the first Hispanic radio DJs in San Bernardino, if not California. His name was Santiago Juarez of San Bernardino. Family legend has it that on his last broadcast before he died, he said goodbye to all of his followers as if he knew it would be his last broadcast. The year was 1949. In doing my research, I also found out that my great-grandmother, Clara Becerra, born in 1864, dying in 1929, was buried in the old Alamanza Cemetery located in Colton, California. Her exact location is unknown, but we have added her picture to the memorial cabinet located in the cemetery. Growing up, music was an important part of our family life. My mom and dad both grew up in the 30s and 40s, listening to swing music and early rock and roll. I grew up listening to swing, rock and roll, blues, and surf. Growing up in an integrated neighborhood, we would hang out with kids from all other cultures, but on Friday nights we would go to the Kaiser Dome, which was in the Orange Show, and listen and dance to Chicano music, which was a mixture of blues and rock and roll. Some of the local bands were the Premiers and Donna and the Belangos from Colton, and some of the LA bands were the Midnighters and the Blendells. I attended Richardson Junior High and graduated from San Bernardino Junior High in 1964. After graduating from Valley College, known as the College by Fedco, I worked at Brown Estates Packing House in the city of Highgrove. The packing house was established in the 1920s and is still there and being used. After dropping out, I worked for the Harris Company as a busboy in the tea room, which later became the Cafe Madrid. I will always remember leaving work during the Christmas season on a Friday and coming in on a Monday with the store all decorated with a holiday theme. The outside windows were a big hit with all the families. In fact, East Street was all decorated up and down the street. It was amazing. I worked at Harris's until being drafted into the U.S. Army in 1966. During that time, just about everyone was drafted or enlisted in the service to fight in the Vietnam conflict. I lost a cousin, John Richard Juarez, and 4 school friends that I remember: Gabriel Gallegos, Louis Hernandez, Rufus Thomas Jr., and Bill Riggs. I recently visited the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C. to see the names of all the veterans who gave up all their lives for our freedom. It was a very sad and moving experience. In closing, I would like to dedicate this part of my history to my parents, my family, and to all veterans. And if you should ask me, have you lived all your life in San Bernardino, I would respond, not yet.